Greetings fellow Mist Wanderers, my name is Steve Morgan and this is DM of the Mists covering all things Curse of Strahd and Ravenloft. I want to do some more videos where I cover off content available on DMsGuild that complements Curse of Strahd and Ravenloft. I've previously covered off Strahd gave me goosebumps and Ravenloft gave me goosebumps, which is sort of toning down the content of both for a younger audience, like sort of ages 8 to 12 I think it is. And one I've wanted to cover off for a while is the Interactive Tome of Strahd by Assiduous, if that's how that's pronounced, who is the person who created it, put it on DMsGuild. Although, funnily enough, in my research, Assiduous isn't the person who came up with the idea originally. I found a Reddit post where somebody else kind of came up with the concept of the Tome of Strahd, just sort of put it in a Reddit post, and then Assiduous replies being like, this is cool, do you mind if I expand on it? Yeah, go for it. So quite cool to kind of see how that kind of spark happened, you know, how this thing was kind of birthed and expanded on and made available. And the beautiful thing about it is it's pay what you want on DMsGuild. It's suggested price $15, I believe. There's been a recent update to DMsGuild, looks loads better, but it's less obvious now what the price is unless I'm missing it. So if you get it, chuck them $1 or $2, and I'll include a link in the description below to make it nice and easy. A few disclaimers before we get into things. Firstly, I've not run this. I know it's always better in videos like this where I say, I've run this is my experience running this. I really wanted to run this, but discovered it a few sessions after my players found the Tome of Strahd in my Curse of Strahd game from when I ran it. And so I felt then it was probably a bit too late. And it probably worked out for the best because we had to kind of shorten our campaign and end it sooner than expected. And this would have padded it out more and we would have struggled to get all the end game stuff done. So, you know, it worked out well in the end. If I were to run Curse of Strahd again, I shouldn't say if, when I run Curse of Strahd again, I'm definitely going to consider including this because it's amazing. I didn't run it, but I read through it twice, so I don't know it inside out. I feel like I know it fairly well, but I might have missed some stuff, might have misinterpreted some stuff. If that's the case, I'm sorry, and feel free to correct me in the comments. It said it was last edited in 2023. Now, I downloaded it a while back, I can't remember when, but I re-downloaded it just now, before ahead of this video. But apparently in 2021, it had a huge facelift, quote by the author. So if you ran it before 2021, some of the stuff I might talk about may be a little different to what it was back when you ran it. There's a content warning for torture at one point, in addition to the usual Curse of Strahd content warnings. I'm not going to list them all, but if you know the kind of stuff that appears in Curse of Strahd, some of that might also appear in this. This one's obvious. There'll be spoilers for Curse of Strahd and the novel I Strahd in this, so you know, it feels obvious to say, but I feel like I should say it just in case. And it also presumes that you know the lore of Curse of Strahd and I Strahd. You know who the characters are, you know some of the scenes and some of the settings. This video will be long enough without me having to stop and explain who everyone is at every point. So it presumes you know bits about the book, or books I should say, with the novel as well. And lastly, no paid promotion. Assiduous didn't ask me to do this video. I did it because I already had access to it. I wanted to do a video about it, and I want DMs considering it. Wanted to help you with kind of giving you an overview of what it's like. If you've not yet started Curse of Strahd, it might be worth looking at this ASAP, because I can understand how you might think, well, I'll look at this like just before they find the tome in your game, but you can actually tie it into the Taroka reading. So you can have it that the holy symbol of Ravenkind and the Sun Sword, instead of being found in present day Barovia, are actually found within the pages of the book in one of the chapters, which is a really cool idea. Obviously, you have the Tome of Strahd. I was thinking to myself, could you put the Tome of Strahd in this? But no, you'd be putting the Tome of Strahd in the Tome of Strahd, and my head started to hurt at the implications of that. But you could put the Sun Sword and the Holy Symbol in there. And if you've run it, please let me know how it went for you. If I got anything wrong, please do correct me, or if there was anything I was unsure of, or if you did anything different, please jump in the comments, be helpful for me and other people who want to run this in the future. I'll give a quick overview first of all. Best comparison I can make, for those of you who know your Harry Potter, it's very similar to Tom Riddle's diary. Instead of just reading about Strahd's history, or Tom Riddle's history as the case is for Harry Potter, so the players are essentially sucked into the book. The story kind of comes to life for them, and they experience it as if they were there. And it's got characters from Curse of Strahd, but also I Strahd as well. So you've got Rahadin, who's in Curse of Strahd, but who wasn't in pre-5th edition Ravenloft. His introduction into the setting, I guess, is Curse of Strahd. But obviously he wouldn't have appeared in the I Strahd novel, but he's in this. And also characters like Alec Gwilym. So Alec Gwilym doesn't appear in Curse of Strahd. You've got Godfrey Gwillem, who probably a nod to Alec, and you've got the tie-in there, as the author does, of Alec and Godfrey being siblings. So you've got them in this as well. So you've got Ice Strahd characters and Curse of Strahd characters exclusive to those two things mixed together, which is really cool. The tome becomes an attunable item. As you kind of go through the chapters and learn more about Strahd's lore and unlock more chapters, you unlock spells as well. And I think this is great. I did a video talking about the Taroka treasures, the 3 items, and I've seen a criticism from DMs and presumably players as well, where the Sun Sword, great. It's a holy symbol, great. The tome, just information, doesn't really do anything beyond that. So this means that someone can attune to it and cast spells from it. You've got 3 items that can be used against Strahd, and essentially 3 magic items instead of 2 magic items in an exposition drop. And unlike Tom Riddle's diary, where Harry just kind of observes what's going on, the great thing about this, because it's D&D, right? It would have been boring if this just plays out as cutscenes. The PCs are not just observing, but they're active. They are participants in what's going on. The most common one, although it does vary, most common one is Strahd's guards. So they are there, working at the castle or part of Strahd's army and things like that. And then there's also the interesting ethical quandary of, that means they're playing the bad guys, but they might not want to play the bad guys. Technically they should be, but you might have situations where they think, well, actually, we don't want to help Strahd with this. And there are contingencies as well, where you can be like Strahd's guards who fight against Strahd or betray Strahd or swap sides, or maybe instead of being Strahd's guards, they play someone else in that chapter. So it's quite interesting how, you've got those options as well. DM Andy, a popular map maker who's done loads of Curse of Strahd maps, has also done every chapter of the Interactive Tome. And I got DM Andy's blessing to show his maps. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show each map when I talk about each chapter. I'm going to do a quick chapter by chapter overview. I will show his map alongside to kind of help give an idea of how it looks. You haven't got DM Andy on Patreon, and so you don't have access to the maps. One of the maps, I think it's the Monastery, is included for free by the author if you get it from DMsGuild, the Interactive Tome. But if you're a patron of DM Andy or you've been considering it, you can get all the maps through there. And I got DM Andy's blessing to show them all, which is great. So thank you to him. All right, let's do a chapter by chapter overview. I'm going to just whiz through each one, give an idea of what happens. Before you even get into the chapters properly, you've got what's called as the interior. So this is basically when they first open it and start reading it. And there's a cool clue here. Oh, by the way, I've got 2 screens here. So I've got the Interactive Tome PDF over here. I've got my notes over here, so you might see my head swiveling. And it talks about how there was a glyph of warding on it. And I think this is for DM's notes only. It's been removed by Van Richten. But the cool thing you could have is later on, say if they have the tome, and then they see Van Richten later on, Van Richten's like, I see you found that. And, the sort of, all the pieces fit, and they go, you're the one who removed it. Cool. The VR got to it first. The prologue. So at this point, they kind of get sucked in. I think it's described as mist begins to pour, you feel lighthearted, and you wake up and you're in this new scene. The prologue's cool. It's a 12-year-old Strahd. He's having some fighting training from Rahadin, some combat training. And King Barov is there as well, kind of talking about how his son is amazing and basking in his amazingness. And in this chapter, you're Strahd's imaginary friends, which I guess makes sense. I think it says somewhere that you can have it, the PCs could be his imaginary friends in later chapters as well, but it does give options to say, in this chapter you're his guards, for example. And the PCs can chat to 12-year-old Strahd, and there's kind of this is what 12-year-old Strahd knows and can tell you. And then straight into the action, chapter 1 is Argynvostholt, and it's essentially the battle of when Strahd comes to the valley and takes over. And it starts off where he's with his 2 closest advisors, Rahadin and Alexandra Gwillem. So Alec Gwillem has been gender swapped in this, which I think is a great change, to be honest. But I suppose I can imagine if people want to keep it to Alec, the original male version, that's fine, And the cool thing about this chapter is you've got one of 3 options. You can either stay with Strahd, or you can go with Rahadin, or you can go with Alec. And so there's 3 different ways it can play out. I don't know if you can do more than one. I think you just do the one, and then you choose. And Andy's map accounts for that, so it's split into 4 parts. One of them is the war tent, where it starts, and then there's the 3 different maps of the 3 different scenarios, depending on where they go. And if you go with Alec Gwillem, there's a fight with Godfrey Gwillem, her brother, Which, oh, that's so cool. Before he was a revenant, obviously back when he was a human, then this is where presumably he gets defeated. And then the chapter ends with Argynvost, the silver dragon, flying. There's no fight with the silver dragon, but I suppose you could include that if you wanted to. It'd be a really cool thing to do. Chapter 2 is the rise of Ravenloft. This is Strahd doing his I am the land sort of connection with the earth. Sort of cuts his hand, squeezes some blood and says, I am Strahd, I am the land. There's also a moment where he's in his study and he's just received news that his mother, Queen Ravenovia, has just passed. And Gabriel Andral, who is a Morning Lord priest, is there. Does that name sound familiar? Because it's Saint Andral of the Bones of Saint Andral in Balaki and Saint Andral's Feast. That is so cool. Chapter 3, Brothers in Arms. Sergei arrives, sheltered, young, handsome, youthful Sergei. And there is a tournament. And you can have different people fight different people. But then there's a sort of mini cutscene where Sergei challenges Strahd, and there's a sort of battle between you know what I mean? I think I've read this like twice through. It sounds as though Strahd wins, and Sergei's like, hey, well done, Strahd. But Sergei's absolutely fine. Strahd is like out of breath, panting, sweaty, and it's kind of like a realization to him that he's not as maybe as quick or as strong or as youthful as he used to be, and he gets a bit annoyed and frustrated by that. And it ends, each chapter ends with like a line, and sometimes, I should have mentioned this earlier, sometimes they're from the Tome of Strahd as it appears in Curse of Strahd, and sometimes it's actually, I believe, lines from Strahd, and sometimes I imagine it's just the authors written their own thing or tweaked something, and it has that thing of, he was handsome and youthful. I hated him for both. I love that line. The next chapter is all about Tatyana. It sounds great. It's a dinner between Strahd, Patrina, Sergei, Tatyana, Lady Ilona, who's also an Strahd character, and Rahadin. No, not joining in the dinner, but serving and being butler. And gives some great information about each of the guests and their goals. For example, Strahd wants to know as much about Tatyana as possible. Patrina wants Strahd's affection. Sergei just wants everyone to be happy. Tatyana just wants to, this is all new to her. This is weird. She just wants to fit in and, not embarrass herself, I guess. Ilona, bask in the chaos of the meal. Ilona never really struck me as that kind of character, but I do love that. And Rahadin just wants to make sure everyone's happy, but he despises Patrina and wants to embarrass and mock and demean her any way he can. And it does say, try and have Strahd, or even the PCs, lead the meal. PCs might be like respected guards, and they're there during the meal as well, can chat to people. Should have made this point earlier, no matter what the players do, I think it's one of those things where the outcome is always the same. So if one of the PCs tried to attack Strahd then, or something, well, Strahd obviously survives. This is the whole thing about, meddling with affairs in the past and time travel and stuff, although it's not time travel, but you get what I mean, that kind of concept. But yeah, they can be at the meal, chatting to people as if they were there. It's really cool. And it's at this point, if the players don't already know, that the DM can describe how Tatyana looks just like Irina, and they might be like, oh, and connect some dots there. There's a really strange bit. It's I don't know how other DMs feel about this, whether you've run it or if you were to run it. There's a bit where Strahd and Tatyana are sort of in the music room, and which I think is just south of the study. It might not be a music room, but I think it's got some musical instruments in it. And they sing together. And I think it's cool, and I think it shows Strahd's kind of fallen in love with her, and maybe he starts to feel as though, oh, maybe she loves me back. And then Sergei comes into the room and she's fawning over Sergei, and it kind of probably hurts him even more because maybe he thought he stood a chance. But they sing together, and I don't know, Strahd doesn't strike me as the singing kind. Maybe, and you've been playing a musical instrument. I maybe have that wrong. Yeah, I just thought it was a bit of an odd moment. And he also tries to drug Tatyana with a love potion at one point, which feels a bit odd. I can see Strahd doing that, and I got a vague feeling that maybe that's talked about in Strahd, but it's been a while since I've read it. If someone can confirm, that'd be great. But yeah, there was a couple of moments in this chapter where I thought, I'm not sure about that. I probably wouldn't do that, or I'd do it a little bit different. Chapter 5 is really cool, Unholy Communion. This is when Strahd goes to the Amber Temple and makes his dark pact. Alec goes with him, and the cool thing is, so if you've read Strahd, it's different to how it plays out in Curse of Strahd. In Curse of Strahd, he makes his pact at the Amber Temple. The Amber Temple, I believe, is a 5th edition, Curse of Strahd edition. In Strahd, he sacrifices Alec in order to do his pact, and I think it takes place at the castle. But this is Alec going with him, helping him, and then as he makes his pact, him basically fighting and sacrificing Alec. And this is the first instance, I think, where the PCs can actually swap sides and maybe try and help Alec. And if that happens, Strahd defeats them. And the temple, Amber Temple, it's Amber Temple in its heyday, back when it looked normal, and there's priests and monks there who try and protect it and defend it, and Strahd and Alec and presumably the PCs can fight them. And you see Exothanta before Exothanta was a lich as well, which I thought was really cool. And then chapter 6, the wedding day, wedding bells. And in this, it plays out like Strahd with, and I suppose Curse of Strahd alludes to this, where Leo Dilisnya stages the coup and tries to kill Strahd. Strahd enacts his pact and bites, drinks the blood of Sergei, gross. Tatyana, in her attempt to escape, with Strahd trying to pursue her, goes off the Overlook. But, and again, this is another thing I was a bit unsure of, the wording suggests that she falls off by accident. Like, she's trying to get away from Strahd and she doesn't like what Strahd's become, but she throws herself off. The wording is that she falls off in a daze and she tumbles off, which makes it sound like it's accidental, not intentional. I know, because it's, if she throws herself off and it's willing, it's suicide, it's complicated. But I think the idea is he's become a monster. She wants to get away from him, even if it means, sacrificing herself. But this kind of suggests that maybe she fell off by accident. I don't know how I feel about that. Be interested to see what people's thoughts are. And again, we're DMs, we can change what we want, don't want. So if I were running this, I would probably play it close to the actual Tome of Strahd, which basically says she flung herself off, or whatever the wording is. That's essentially like Act 1, if you will. I think it's called Life, the first 6 chapters, and Death are the last 6 chapters, which is cool, because obviously now Strahd is dead, or undead. So we get a couple of chapters that you can link to the Fanes of Barovia, and it shows Strahd desecrating the Fanes. So it shows him desecrating Yester Hill and the Goldtheus tree. If you're not doing the Fanes, this might end up actually backfiring and being a bit confusing, because then the players think, oh, do we have to do something at Yester Hill? So if you're not doing the Fanes, I'd probably suggest skipping this and the next chapter, but see what you think. But if you are doing the Fanes, it seems it makes a lot of sense to include them. And there's a fight here with Gabriel Andrel and Serena Markovia, as in Saint Markovia. Now, one thing that's not made very clear here is it makes it sound like you fight both of them, defeat both of them, but Serena Markovia, Saint Markovia, appears in a later chapter, so presumably she can't be killed properly. Maybe you can knock her out, or even if you do a blow without declaring it as a knockout, she's not actually killed. But I believe this is the chapter where Saint Andrel is killed. And the next chapter is about Berez, and you have Babala Saga, but before she became like a super witch, and she's just like a regular witch, I guess. It says to use the stat block of a Barovian witch rather than her actual stat block. And a young Morgantha as well, the sort of main night hag that, in Curse of Strahd proper is at the old bone grinder, the windmill. And this is again another sort of feigned desecration, and this is a really grim bit as well. You can assist Babala Saga in torturing a priest. They're trying to get some priests to renounce their god and, make Strahd their god. And I think there's already a few dead priests who've done that, but she's torturing one who's refusing, and you can help with the torture. That's dark. I know it's Curse of Strahd, I know it's a horror campaign, and I know, this is kind of expected. It's part of the package, but I don't know, it's it's still dark. So that's my content warning for chapter 8. And I believe he uses something here with a connection. This shows how the Heart of Sorrow is created as well. So that's quite a cool tie into the Heart of Sorrow, and getting a glimpse of that maybe before they've seen it at the castle. Chapter 9, this is a really cool chapter. This is Saint Markovia's attack on Castle Ravenloft. So you play as guards who are essentially defending the sort of invading army. And this is where Saint Markovia is killed for good, I believe. I think there's a box text description of Strahd killing her. And it's cool as well, because some of the enemies you fight are, the way they're described, they sound like an adventuring party. There's a wizard, there's a rogue, so on and so on. So it's almost like the PCs will be playing as guards fighting another group who would have just been like them, trying to fight Strahd and rid the land and the world of Strahd and try and save the day, but they lose. It's a pretty epic and combat-filled encounter. I love it. With a big battle on the drawbridge as well. So cool. Chapter 10 plays out from sort of Strahd, and it's got Vasili von Holtz. And it's almost like a blink and you miss it moment where it talks about Vasili transforming into Strahd. So at this point, if your players are friends with Vasili, and don't realise who Vasili actually is. That could be like a, oh no, oh my goodness moment. Love it. And it plays out like in Strahd. So he visits Lavina Wachter, who is the Wachter family ancestor, and goes to the monastery and fights Leo. And a map was made especially with all the different rooms, all the different areas of the monastery. I think that's really cool. And there's a map included, as I said, and of course Diamandi's done a map. It's a beast of a chapter for that reason, because there's quite a few areas. And essentially Leo is defeated, and just like in Strahd. Chapter 11, nearly at the end. There's 12 chapters altogether. Final Dusk. This is another, oh boy, another complicated chapter, because it's about what happens to the Dusk Elves. Now, if you know what happens to the Dusk Elves, you know that Strahd and Rahadin, or Rahadin especially, I suppose, does a lot of horrible stuff to the Dusk Elves. You don't necessarily participate in their deaths directly, but one of the tasks is the PCs as Strahd's guards are tasked with rounding them up. So, and it was interesting seeing on the discussion, on DMsGuild you've got like reviews, but you also have discussions. There's one person who was like, really enjoyed the product, but a couple of things, there were some typos, blah, 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 I wasn't sure about this bit. And oh my God, this chapter, you're basically saying that the PCs are kind of participating in a genocide. Yeah, and the author describes how, it didn't want to just be that they sit there and do nothing. That's equally worse. And you do have the opportunity, if you wanted to, of trying to help some of them escape. But I think it's that sad thing of, unfortunately, because you can't change what's already happened in the past, they will get found and caught and killed eventually. So that's a very dark chapter, similar to the one where Baba's torturing somebody. Thankfully, you don't have to actually participate in killing them directly. It's kind of a box text thing where Rahadin cuts off Casimir's ear or ears, as per Curse of Strahd info, and then it describes Strahd as like basically starting to kill them and then fade to black. And chapter 12, another cool chapter. This is Berez before it became a swamp. This is again similar to Strahd, where Strahd meets Marina, the first, I believe, Tatyana reincarnation. And you've got maps of Berez town and the church before they become ruins. And the great thing later on is you can obviously then use, say, Diamandi's maps or somebody else's maps of the ruined church and the ruined area of the town. I think that's great. And to have the PCs then, the other players like walking through those and being like, I remember seeing this in Tome of Strahd and this was an actual building and now it's just a pile of rubble. I think that's great. And it's the whole thing about how the burgomaster and I think the priest didn't like Strahd's intentions, so they kill Marina. Strahd loses it and wipes out the town village, essentially. And there's an epilogue as well. I'm pretty sure the text, I recognise the last few lines as being an Strahd, and it's essentially like him saying, I'm going to rest, as in rest in his coffin, and that's the end of Strahd, and that's the end of the interactive Tome of Strahd. There's also some appendices sections. There's the Fortunes of Ravenloft, where the Sun Sword and the Holy Symbol, as I mentioned earlier, can appear. And it does say if they miss them, it's not that they're missed then and they can never get those items, they just pop out of the book. It's like, oh, here we go, if they happen to miss it and don't get it. There's a section where it's all about the NPCs, all in one section. I believe that was a later edition that was requested by people. A reward list, maps, and credits at the end. So, I hope that helps people considering doing it. I'm going to go through some positives and negatives. I'm the kind of person who hating on stuff, and I'm a fellow DMsGuild creator as well, and I've not, just a few supplements. I've never made anything to this extent that's, an adventure, but, this product is amazing, and there's loads of great stuff in it, but I do have a few, mostly minor nitpicks as well. The positives, first of all, it's a really cool concept. I love the idea of it. As soon as I first heard about it, I was like, that is cool. I wish I'd included that in my game. It gives more lore for Strahd, for Barovia, and other people. You get to see glimpses of places that you then see in the future that may then be ruined, like parts of the castle, Argynvostholt, the Amber Temple. I think that's great. Seeing people like Sergei, Petrina, Tatyana, Exophanto, Leo Dilisnya, Bablasaga, Morgantha, the Wachter ancestors. I think that's all great. I love that. I love the tie-ins with Strahd and quotes from Strahd being used, as well as quotes from Curse of Strahd, the Tome of Strahd as it appears in Curse of Strahd. And I think the Turoku reading tie-in is amazing. I love the Turoku reading full stop, as in like the general idea and concept of it. All 3 of my DMsGuild resources are tied to Turoku readings, and the fact that you could find the Holy Symbol of Ravenkind with Sun Sword in the book just is awesome. On to the negatives. If the author's watching this, I'm really sorry. I love it. This is like a 9 out of 10 type of thing, a 9.5 out of 10. I wonder if it's actually too much of a lore dump, because the players can learn out so much through this, and admittedly it's spread out. They might not do all of it. They might just do the first few chapters or something like that. But I do wonder if they do it all from start to end, not necessarily in one go, but spread out, they can learn a lot. And I'm wondering if it gives away too much. But then again, you could argue that they've worked for it. They deserve to discover all that. Is it too much and too long? 12 chapters is a lot. I felt like some of the chapters were a bit slower than others, like the 2 Fanes ones, so the Yester and the Berez ones. If it were me, I'd probably cut those, unless I was including the Fanes stuff, in which case I'd probably include them. But I'd be worried as well that the players might, I don't want to say get bored or lose interest, but I don't know. I think there's the risk sometimes as DMs, we geek out about this stuff and think this is going to be amazing, my players will love this. But then when the players actually go through it, players might be like, I don't know. There's the complication of the PCs may instinctively want to work against Strahd, or might not want to do some of his orders, such as the Dusk Elf chapter. Like I said, there's contingencies for that, but it's complicated. The players might want to just play their players as they're intended. They might not want to play as Strahd's guards, and I think that's fair enough. But if you remove that element and they're just observers, that might be boring. That might be just like long cutscenes they're essentially just watching. They can unlock some very powerful spells. Some of them are above 5th level, and there is a mechanic whereby you can attempt to cast the spell, roll a check, and if you don't hit it, you can't cast a spell, and not only is your turn wasted, but the spell is wasted. So that's good. But some of the spells are, I think one of them is up to level 7th level or 8th level. And the book also talks about how Strahd can cast a spell that's, I think, 6th, 7th or 8th level, but he can only cast, if you look at stat block, you can only cast up to 5th level. So that feels a bit like Strahd stretching above his abilities. You could argue that, maybe he did the check and he passed it. Or, because this is intended as it could go up to level 15, you might use a Strahd stat block that is stronger anyway, and he can cast those spells. The level scaling feels a little off. So it says it for players levels 5 to 15. And at first I thought that meant, so the idea is that like, whether you've got level 5 players or level 15 players, if you're doing if they find the tome fairly early on, or they find the tome later on and you're playing it as beyond level 10, that it is kind of covered. But no, actually the earlier chapters are intended for lower levels and the later chapters are intended for much higher levels, which is fine if you are playing a campaign that goes on beyond, say, level 10, and it's fine if they kind of do the chapters spread out, the coinciding with the levels, and you can obviously adjust on the fly and make the encounters easier or harder depending, but I do feel like the sort of maybe level scaling is a little bit off. This one isn't the author's fault necessarily, but they link to stat blocks. The stat blocks are another resource, and at the time when it was created, I think the resource was free, but the resource has either been taken offline or it's now paid. And I did see, I think it was on the DMsGuild discussion page, somebody queried this, and he's like, here you go, here's a link to the PDF where you can access them all, and that's fine. But it's not very future-proofed, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Stat blocks, I guess, could have been included in the resource. I'm not sure about the feasibility of doing that, because these stat blocks were someone else's work, and they're not official, like 5th edition stat blocks, which I think are okay to include in stuff like this, to an extent. But yeah, that's kind of a bit frustrating that people then might feel like they've got to buy, additional resource in order to get them if they don't find this link to this free PDF that was passed on. Another thing I was quite surprised about is it's not an easy read. Like I said, I read through it twice through, and some stuff didn't make sense. Some stuff, I still feel like I haven't answered questions. Thankfully, the Reddit, Curse of Strahd subreddit helped. I searched some stuff and other people had the same questions as me, and it was kind of answered by either the author or other people. But yeah, it's not an easy read, and I don't think it's like sort of grab and play. It's something that requires pre-reading at least once, and then a bit of work from the DM to maybe tweak some stuff or make some stuff fit and make more sense. Or at least that was my experience. What would I do? I think I would definitely run the first 6 chapters, so the first half. That's sort of closer to Strahd, although Strahd also does have things like the chapter with Berez and Marina and 1 or 2 others. And it's true, I guess, closer to the Curse of Strahd tome. Curse of Strahd tome runs up to explaining what happened on the wedding day. Doesn't really cover much beyond. And then I'd probably choose some chapters beyond that, depending on what kind of fits, or how, you know, if the players feel like they want more and they want to keep diving into it, then great. Like I said earlier, if I'm not doing the Fanes stuff, I might not include the 2 Fanes ones. But I do like the idea of the one where it's the battle outside Castle Ravenloft, Leo, Dilisnya in the monastery, and the Berez one as well. And I'd say be sure to split it up and spread it out. I don't think it makes sense for players to do it all in one go, especially with the level scaling. I think there's the risk that it'll get a bit... like, you spend so much time in the interactive tome, like, it takes away from the sort of the main Curse of Strahd and the main campaign and the main stuff there. I don't know if it said this, maybe I missed this detail, but I treat it as maybe like a once a day thing. And there are mechanics as well. You've got to do a last check to see if you can even read the chapter, and it gets harder. So it makes sense that, like, as you're a later level, it gets easier to read the chapters. And if you're a lower level, it's harder to read the more difficult chapters. And I think that makes sense, and that's fine, and that helps with that extent. But I'd maybe treat it as like a once a day thing, in-game, obviously, where they can't necessarily read multiple chapters in one go. So they have to, like, take breaks from it and jump between doing, you know, interactive tome, do a bit of modern day, present day Barovia stuff, then they go back into the tome and bounce between the two. If you want some further reading, the author did a Ask Me Anything on the Curse of Strahd subreddit a few years ago. It was quite interesting and insightful. I include a link in the description. And I believe they have a Discord as well. So I'll include a link in the description for that as well. That's it for this one. Have you run the Interactive Tome of Strahd? How did it go? What did you change? What were the best bits? What were the not so good bits? Did I get anything wrong? Or was I kind of too harsh in some of the stuff I said? Please jump in the comments, let me know, let other people know. And yeah, I hope this was useful to you. Upcoming videos, I want to still do a video all about Strahd. Strahd is an NPC, you know, and handy resources beyond what's in Curse of Strahd, how I role-played him. I don't necessarily need to do combat because I did a whole video about how to run Strahd in combat, or at least for the final battle. But yeah, do some stuff. I also want to do a video about Rahadin as well. So I might just do a video about Rahadin, running Rahadin, roleplay, combat, etc. And a whole bunch more as well. And in addition to Curse of Strahd, I also cover Ravenloft. So I cover wider domains of dread beyond Barovia, beyond Curse of Strahd. And in my post-Curse of Strahd Ravenloft game I'm running now, my players are in Hazlan, nearly finished Hazlan, and so I'm going to be doing a part 2 video where I talk about Hazlick's Tower, which I've made into a 25-floor mega dungeon. So that's been a lot of fun. Got a session tonight as I record this where I think they're on the 10th floor of 25, slowly working their way up and draining their resources ahead of fighting Hazlick. It's lots of fun. And we'll leave it there. Thank you, Mr. Wanderers.